Friends, good afternoon and welcome to the ultimate weight distributing hitch video. Now, I do not want you to get confused and think that either of the two hitches that I'm talking about here in this video are the ultimate hitch. But I do have a lot to cover in this video, and both are going to be a part of it. So, if you want to skip through the video, I will include chapters at the bottom as to specific things, but as this is the ultimate hitch video, we've got a lot to cover and a lot to talk about. Just some situational things here. We are getting ready to go pick up our new camper tomorrow. And if you want to see that, that's in last week's video. And the biggest thing as it relates to that is the specs of the new rig are very important to how you choose the hitch that's right for you. And so that's what we're going to cover here first. This here is our old hitch. It's an 8,000 pound with 800 pound bars, E2 by Fastway. And these are the bars right here. The stickers and labeling are kind of a bit worn off. But yeah, this hitch, as we're going to talk about here in a little bit, has performed quite well with our old rig. So in just a few seconds we're going to go hitch that up, and then we'll talk about the specs of the rig we've been towing and why that hitch is appropriate. This here is our new hitch. This is a Camco R6, and this is the 1,200 pound model as you see here on the bars. We're not sponsored by anybody, so I can tell you whatever I want to about these hitches, but there are some reasons why we've chosen a Camco product. We're also going to save you a good bit of money in this video, because as I show you how to set up a weight distributing hitch, the dealership where we're buying the RV, they wanted to charge us $500 over the MSRP of the hitch to do the install. So if you buy a hitch from them and you have it installed by them, just know it's going to cost you a lot more money. And with our first rig, after we had the dealership install it and do all that stuff, I ended up having to change the adjustments of it after that anyway, because we were having some issues. And then when we bought a new truck, everything changed. So knowing how to do this is critical to RVing, and RVing safely, because you're going to buy new trucks and you're going to change how you load things. And if you're like us and you have two batteries, these are our new batteries for the new rig. That's in next week's episode, so you want to be sure you're subscribed so you can see the full details on that. But if you have more than one battery, or if you add more than one battery to your rig, that changes everything, because it changes your hitch weight. So you want to know how to set this up. That's why this video is important. And the setup process doesn't change with the differences in what hitch that you buy. So if you're having issues with sway, I'm never going to be a guy that's going to spend your money for you. So my advice to you would be to first try to readjust the hitch that you have, get it adjusted properly, and all that before you go and spend a ton of money on a new hitch. And I recommended that in my last video, and I'm going to continue to recommend it. Adjust the hitch you have properly, and then if that doesn't work, then you might want to try a higher end model, or just a different strategy in order to get whatever issues you're having resolved. So that's this video in a nutshell. Let's go get the old camper hitched up with the E2, and we'll talk about the E2. Alright, so let's talk about the E2, talk about what we like, what we don't like. We'll give you the specs of the current trailer and the truck. That way you have an idea of how this works in this situation. And friends, I know specs can be slightly boring to some people, but it's very important with these hitches that you crunch the numbers and you choose the correct hitch for the correct truck and rig setup. It could save your life. So what we have here, Ram 2500 with a Hemi and 3,000 pounds of payload, gross vehicle weight 10,000 pounds. The trailer over here, 2019 Wildwood X-Lite, gross vehicle weight 7,500 pounds, and the advertised hitch weight is like 550, something along them lines. But in our situation, we are running two batteries, so that does add to your hitch weight. Towing this trailer overall, I think I have somewhere between 15 and 20,000 miles towing this trailer. So a good bit of experience with it. And before we had this truck, we had a half-ton GMC. Its gross vehicle weight was around 7,000 pounds and like 1,500 pounds of payload. With the half-ton, friends, we towed this same trailer with this same E2 weight distribution hitch. Going over the CAT scales, we were something like 40 pounds over our payload of the half-ton truck with our situation towing at that time. So there's a video on the half ton. You can go back and look at that stuff if you want. So set these aside for now. I'm gonna need both hands to lift this sucker, so just set you guys back down there. This is the heavy part here, friends. This here is called your hitch head. This is the regular E2 head. When we bought the new truck, we upgraded and we got this 2.5-inch shank. You don't need to get one of these if you don't want to. I'm not a guy that's gonna spend your money. Back pre-COVID, these shanks were cheap. Now they're like triple the price of what we paid for this. I do feel like it eliminates some of the slop in the hitch, and the adapter, which is right here, this is just one more thing to kind of monkey around with, potentially lose or what have you. But I do tow other things with this, so don't like think that I am anti-adapter. It just, at the time, was easier to get this. And we are hopefully going to be transferring this shank over to the new R6 head, so that'll be later on in the episode chapters if you want to scroll ahead or whatever. But the sticker on the shank was falling off, so I just stuck it over here in case I ever needed it. The shank is a Kurt shank, and like I said, you can get them on Amazon, and I'll put the link in the description if you want. But it's rated for 15,000 pounds gross trailer weight and 1,500 pounds max tongue weight. So that should match up perfectly with the new R6 head, which is rated for 15,000 pounds. But like I said, it also worked well with the E2. I think it's like 11,000 miles or something we've towed this trailer with this truck. So no issues there. You don't want to back it up too far, because then this don't latch, right? So see how this is still in front of the trailer, and when I go down, the trailer's going to pull forward and the truck's going to be pulled backwards, and it'll fit on there just snug. And as soon as it starts to go down on the truck, that's when I stop. And you can latch it just like that. So friends, the way this hitch works, as far as like anti-sway goes, these bars sit on these pads and there's friction. They have kind of like a rough surface on the underside of the bar. You can sort of see it better on this one over here. It kind of wears off over time, the rough surface does, but I don't think it changes the amount of sway control you get. There's definitely still friction there. There are some wear points. There's a little bit of, you know, a groove worn in there. Like I said, probably close to 20,000 miles towing this trailer, and I would imagine you could tow it a lot farther before you have like any catastrophic failures or anything. As you can see here, these are like lower than the pads. You just have to raise up your tongue in order to let those sit on there, or they provided a tool that you can pick that up on. There's a lot of hitches out there along this concept, you know, slight variations in design, but they use a pad like this and a bar with friction. There's some with square bars, like the Equalizer E4. Actually, there's some that have a sway control in the head here, and so there's four points. 1, 2, 3, 4. With a bigger trailer like the one that we're buying, you may need something more than this 2-point sway control. Like I said, this is a 25-foot trailer. I said the gross vehicle weight is 7,500 pounds. At the scales, it was a lot less than that. It was something like 6,200 or something along those lines. This trailer, especially with the added tongue weight of the batteries, because the more tongue weight you have, the less likely it is to sway. Lots of stuff out there about that online. If you load your trailer correctly, you won't have sway problems. The problem with the travel trailer is, by design, you can't load it correctly. So that's why you need weight distributing hitch. But this one is tongue heavy, and like I said, with the batteries. So this one's only 10 feet high. The higher your trailer, the longer the trailer, the more it's like pulling a giant sail behind you. And it can be affected by the wind, the more surface area for the wind to come up against, and semi-trucks and all that stuff, right? Am I saying we wouldn't tow our new trailer with this style of hitch? No, I'm not saying that. We'll talk about why we got what we got. But with this truck and this trailer, and even with our GMC half-ton, we've only had 2 sway events in 20,000 miles. Both of them, I think one with each truck. So the truck didn't make a difference as far as that goes. In my opinion, this hitch did well with this trailer. And yeah, I wouldn't hesitate to keep towing with this like this. And that's why I say, if you're having major issues, your setup is probably wrong. If you're looking for specifics on the setup of this hitch, we do have a video on that. You can go back and watch it. It's in our Truck and RV Technical playlist. But we're going to go over all that stuff just here in a bit with the Camco hitch. And it's all the same information. Like, it's not going to be different just because it's a different style of hitch. Set up everything the same way. Same concepts. Right now, I'm just essentially reviewing this hitch. And it's getting a little long in tooth. Let's get it hitched up here. And then tomorrow we're going to take this trailer down the road for the very last time. You'll notice the hitch jack is turned sideways, and that's because I like to open the tailgate when the trailer's hitched up. I have a video on that as well if you're interested in potentially doing some more stuff on that subject coming down the pipe, but we may be able to open the tailgate with the new trailer. The jack on the new trailer is slightly different style than this, so who knows? You don't know until you try. I still believe that it is incredibly stupid that they do not design stuff like this in a way that makes sense. We'll talk about that more later. But yeah, so that's all hitched up. I haven't put the other one on yet, but you can basically see the concept here. You want these bars to be parallel to your trailer frame. Very important. And that goes for just about all designs. Now, you want to read your owner's manual no matter what you've got and double check what I'm saying. But generally speaking, like, I don't think there's any hitch that I've come across that's different. Every one that I've ever seen, you want these bars parallel to the trailer frame. That means this is here, and they're the same. Okay? Without that, this is not sitting flat on this, and you won't get your sway control. It's generally for everything. You adjust how much weight is distributed by the tilt of your hitch head on the hitch shank. I forget how many washers is in here, I'll show you in a second, but it's going to be different for you. It's all geometry and a little bit of experimenting, so don't be afraid to change stuff to try to get it right. We'll be doing a lot of that, I'm sure. A lot of people debate a lot of silly stuff online. Something that comes up quite often is if you're supposed to cross your chains. I do have mine crossed, as you can see here, okay? But a lot of people will tell you that if you have one single point where they attach to, that you're not supposed to cross them, or that you don't need to cross them. It's one of them things, like the batteries and stuff. You ask a question, and you get 10 different answers from 10 different people, and you have to use your own brain to make up what you're going to do. I have them crossed. That's just what I do, and I will continue to do that. One of these stretchy things for your brake is a good idea. They're pretty inexpensive. I will wait until tomorrow to plug this in. It shouldn't be drawing power from the truck overnight, like while the truck's off and stuff, but I always wait just in case. So we'll plug that in tomorrow. Is I put this through here and over top of the wire, and so that holds the wire so it looks like this. I was told that's what that little clip is designed that way for. Who knows? But that's what I do, and that's the way I do it. I'm going to leave the tongue jack up slightly overnight because it is going to be about 24 hours until we boogie on out of here, and I don't want all that weight on the springs of the truck overnight. We will catch up with you tomorrow at Keystone RV Center, where we're buying our new rig. I'm not sponsored by them or anybody else, but I'm just telling you where we're doing things, especially if my local Pennsylvanians, if you're looking for like a deal on stuff. I've already done the research and came to these conclusions. So that's where we will catch up with you. We'll show you the install of the Camco, and I do want to tell you why we got the Camco. That's coming up right now. All right. So the main thing with setting up a brand new hitch, you're going to need a tape measure. There's lots of measurements that you're going to need. The first is you want to get the trailer fairly level and parallel to the ground, and so I've taken measurements from the ground to the frame, just like this, on the front and the back. And you raise and lower your tongue jack to get it to be fairly parallel to the ground. Achieved 21 inches pretty much on all four corners. This is a fairly level spot that Keystone RV has provided for us to do this. Then you're gonna come over to your ball mount, and they want you to measure to the top of the ball mount. On our rig, it's a little less than 21 inches. They want you to add 1/8 of an inch to that measurement for every 100 pounds of tongue weight. So we have over 1,000 pounds, so you know it's at least 10/8, if not a little more. So I'm going about 1.25 inches above, and that's 22 inches. So then we're going over to our hitch, and the top of the ball, 22 inches is right here, so we're maybe a little bit over that, but that's just the brakes. You can only go in 1-inch increments for your settings. This is the shank that we had previously that I showed you earlier in the episode. This is a Kurt shank, 15,000 pounds and 1,500 pounds of tongue weight. This is plenty strong. This is the Camco 1200 model with the bars you see over there, the 1,200 pound bars. I talked to the engineers at Camco, and the bars are rated for plus or minus 200 pounds from what they stayed on there, so good up to 1,400 pounds tongue weight. And this is 15,000 pounds, the ball and everything. The trailer that we're putting this on, I haven't showed you guys yet, but it's a Salem View, 29 View model, so it's roughly 10,000 pounds gross vehicle weight, and like I said, over 1,000 pounds of tongue weight. So those are the kinds of things that you need to assess when you're picking out a hitch. Why we went with Camco, I called several hitch manufacturers and was asking questions about what do we need, what's the right choice for the hitch. And Camco, when I called them, I got a real person in this country who was probably one of the engineers who designed the thing and had a lot of knowledge, and he asked me all the right questions. What truck do you have? What trailer do you have? He looked up the specs on all this stuff, and we talked about adding a second battery. Well, that adds to your hitch weight, so that's why he suggested the 1,200 pound bars, which you see here, and that's what we're using. So we're kind of in the midst of getting this thing set up so we can go home. The next step, I guess, these bolts, getting back to the install here, these are still loose. There's a thumb screw in there, and that controls your tilt back and forth. Camco's YouTube video suggests that you start at 5.5 turns out on the thumb screw. Once everything's tight, you'll tighten that up too to make sure that it doesn't move, and I'll show you how to do that here in a bit. So 5.5 turns out on the thumb screw, and then this bottom square nut, you'll want to tighten that all the way. A big thing is if you're going to be doing this yourself, you want to make sure that you're going to come prepared with all the tools necessary to do this. So you can see kind of what I got here: an impact, a torque wrench, just some other random stuff. Your objective for sure is to be prepared, because you don't want to get here and not be able to do this and then have to pay them $500 to do it. That's a lot of money. That's why we're here doing it ourselves. We're going to get this hitched up, and we're going to put them bars on and get all the rest of the bracketry hooked up and see how weight is distributed on the truck. So friends, everybody gets this wrong, and it amazes me, but this is how you screw up your towing setup. The reason you have a weight distribution hitch is because your steering and your braking abilities of the truck rest on the front axle. And when you put all that tongue weight on the back, it lifts this up, and then your truck steering and braking are compromised. A weight distributing hitch puts that weight back on the front so that you can still steer your truck. And you want to read the owner's manual of your truck, and of course the owner's manual of the hitch, which Rachel's been reading to me, because there's all kinds of little tidbits and stuff in there that you may need to know. And that pertains to how much weight they want distributed, because GM, with my half-ton, wanted more weight on the front than Ram does with this 3/4 ton. So be sure to check that out for proper setup. But we're not even gonna measure how much the back sags, because I don't care how much the back sags. I care about how much weight we're putting back on the front. The back sag means the truck is doing the work that it's supposed to. And the front measures in at 40 1/2 over here. So now, friends, we are going to attempt to put all of this trailer's tongue weight down on the hitch, and we're going to see how much it raises the front. This could be the slowest tongue jack ever. So we went, friends, from 40.5 to roughly 41.25 up front. So I'm keeping track of this stuff in my phone so that I will know. Now, in order to get the weight distributed properly, we need to go halfway back to 40.5. So we have a 3/4 inch span, so we need to go roughly 3/8 back down. That's what those bars ought to accomplish. So we're gonna hook up the rest of that bracketry, and then we'll come back here and measure and see where we're at. So the next step is to put the bars in. So I've inserted the bars into the hitch, and you want to make sure that they're fully engaged in there. And then we got to worry about the placement of these brackets. And you know, roughly they need to go right here, because this pin goes here, and you want them to be parallel to the frame, friends. That's same as every other hitch. So you know, whatever this is going to take to get these to be parallel is what we have to do. So I'm going to look into the instructions and kind of see where we're at, but this is roughly how you get the placement of your bars. And I've also raised up the hitch slightly, and I'm probably going to keep it raising it up until this bar gets parallel to aid me in the placement of my bracket. So as we talked about with the E2 equalizer, you want these bars to be parallel to the trailer frame, and that's what we've achieved here. Without everything latched, like before you bolt these on, there's this outer piece, and then there's like a little thin piece, and then there's another one on the other side. What I did was, with this ball hooked up, lifted the trailer and the truck with the jack to determine where these were going to go and where they were going to sit, and then we were able to determine this. If you didn't have a bunch of stuff over here on this side, you could have flip-flopped these so that your bolts would have been over here. So they are reversible. You just would take this one to the other side of the RV and flip it over. And you can also have these mounted below. For there's certain trailers where the hitch and everything is down below. So that's your options for mounting these. And then of course they can go this way or that way to make sure that this pin fits in the slot just like so. This is a really, really cool mechanism. You push this button and it disengages those pins in there, and you just push it through the hole and it can't come out. Pretty nifty. Like I said, this is the Recurve R6. We'll talk more about this hitch, why we picked it, and the benefits of it in the next portion of this video when we get back to the house, but we're anxious to get the trailer home for now. We do, though, have the sway control turned on. There's an Allen wrench that you'll use for that. And yeah, so first try with everything, and the measurements on the front of the truck worked out perfect. So we're exactly halfway back to where we started. The rear end of the truck sagged a little over an inch. Camco says 1/8 inch per 100 pounds, so we're on target there as well. I know what I forgot to tell you. So these bolts here, you're going to want to tighten these quite a lot. 260 pound-feet of torque is what they call for. Now, in the Reese hitch manual, which I researched this years ago, you go to 150 pounds and then go a quarter turn more. Everybody has 150 pound torque wrench probably. You pretty much need it for your day-to-day trailering and auto activities. But most people don't have one that goes up to 260 pound-feet. So that's a good method. It's a good solid way of measuring this and making everything correct. And then, because you don't have a torque wrench to check it, I take a Sharpie or a Milwaukee pen, and you might have to redraw your line occasionally, but I draw a line on the end of the bolt and the nut. I'll show it to you. And you want to check that all the time. When you're hitching up, when you're at gas stations, all that stuff. Check that and make sure it's right. That way you know your bolts are torqued right and you don't have to get out a torque wrench. We'll look at that again when we get home. Make sure that everything is still good. The truck's tailgate does not open. Does not open. So trailer manufacturers still can't figure it out. We'll have to remedy that. So look forward to that in an upcoming episode. We're going to do it differently than the last time too, by the way. So if you've seen the way we did it last time, this is going to be different because we're doing everything better this time and smarter and easier. So we did transfer our little dooflicky over. The mechanism for the trailer brakes is the same. So that worked out perfectly. We'll talk more about the Recurve R6 here in the last portion of this video. We're long, obviously, but if you look at the truck and you look at the trailer, and everything's pretty level to the surface of the ground. So I'm pretty confident in this setup, and so we'll catch up with you back at the house. Alright, well, a little bit of change of scenery, friends. We have made it home. Just some thoughts on the drive up here as far as the Recurve R6 hitch goes. We really had no issues. It seemed like the trailer was pretty solid behind us, and it seems like the initial adjustment is pretty adequate. But let's talk about the Recurve R6 and what makes it unique. So I think I forgot to tell you, when we were at the dealer, because things were a bit hectic there. The thumb screw that's in there that we turned out 5.5 turns, a little over that actually is what I did. When you get everything tightened up, they want you to take a flat screwdriver. This is not that, but you could probably use this for it, and butt it up against that thumb screw and tap it with a hammer and get it firmly against the shank so that it doesn't move. And then the one underneath, you use a wrench to tighten. And the square bolt you should have had tightened whenever you were putting the bars together, to make sure that it holds all this together, because when you're installing the bars and these brackets here, these bolts here are still loose at that time. But you can hitch up the trailer and you can, do all your stuff with the bars with these loose. You don't tighten these until after you've confirmed that everything is correct. I want to make sure I do a good job of explaining with these brackets too. These can go on either side of the trailer, and that'll move where your bolts and stuff are. If you had this one on the opposite side of the trailer, your bolts would be back here. But I couldn't put the bolts back here because there's a bunch of junk in the way. So this was the best way to do it. Follow your instructions as it relates to that. This bolt has to fit firmly in between here, just like that. It's actually an incredibly easy install. Now, what makes the Recurve R6 unique? Let's talk about that. From what I've watched on YouTube, I am not a fan of the R3, okay? The R3 has, they told me the guys at Camco said only 300 pounds sway eliminating force. Same with the TR3, only 300 pounds of sway eliminating force. With this size trailer that's 35 feet long, they wanted me to have the R6 with 600 pounds of sway eliminating force. So that's important. But that's not why I'm not a fan of the R3. The R3 has, there's like a dial somewhere on here, and you use this same Allen wrench and you crank up that dial to maximize or lessen the amount of sway. And if you want to disengage the sway completely, you have to turn it all the way off. And so that seems like a lot of fumbling around, and seems like you could get different amounts of sway for each trip unless you put that back in the same spot, and I didn't like anything about that. This one, you can turn the sway on and off. If you see down here, there's only 2 settings, on and off. And you use this wrench and you turn the sway off or on. But you don't even really need to do that. When you're going down the road and you make a sharp turn, it automatically disengages, which is why I like this hitch, and we're going to talk about that here in a second. Like when we were leaving the dealership and making some sharp turns and stuff, and I had the windows of the truck open, you can hear it clicking on and off when you make those sharp turns. And it's kind of freeing as far as the trailer goes. It allows the trailer to follow behind you better. And of course, getting into my driveway here, the sway turned off. And the sway is still off. See, look, you can see right there. And there's the button. See this ball bearing right here? That's your sway control. And when these are on top of those ball bearings, that means your sway is active. When it's shifted differently, that means it's not. And then, like I said, if you turn those off completely, the ball bearings actually sink down in and they can't be activated whatsoever. Now you can sort of see where the truck and trailer is here in the yard, and that door on the left over there, that's where the trailer needs to go. And so when I'm pulling into the garage and I'm going to make this tight turn to get in here and stuff, it will deactivate the sway on its own. And so I don't know if I'm going to always turn it off. Definitely if I'm like sitting here for whatever reason for any length of time, it's easy enough to get out of the truck, shut that off, and you do have to do it on both sides. There is a thing you got to hit with the Allen key on both sides of the trailer, but it takes seconds, and it should allow me to make that tight turn and get in the garage. As far as campsites and stuff goes, yeah, I'll probably leave it on and let it disengage itself. See how easily that works and doesn't work over the course of time of ownership. But I'm pretty stoked about that feature. I think it's good, and that's what makes this hitch quiet, right? So like when you got an equalizer or a Fastway E2 like we did before, it's cracking and popping and doing all sorts of stuff when you're in the campground. It doesn't really bother me personally, but it does bother some people. So if you're one of them people that is bothered by noise, these Recurve hitches, they're quiet, and that goes for the whole series. They're quiet hitches. But like I said, and I'm not trying to upsell anyone, and I'm not sponsored by anyone, but I highly recommend this for ease of use over the other two. Now the TR3 I like because you don't have to raise and lower your tongue jack to get the bars on, and that's why I wanted that in the first place. But like I said, the 600 pounds of force plus this ability to turn on and off your sway, it pushed me towards the Recurve. I think I mentioned earlier in the video, I'm recommending Camco not because of sponsorship, just because I like their customer service. When I called to ask questions, the guy that I talked to knew all the answers, and he looked up the specs of everything and was very willing to have a conversation and give me the information that I needed. So that's why I'm pushing their product. You know, I did actually ask them to sponsor the video and they didn't want to, so I could be against them because of that, but the customer service to me outweighs all of that. So that's where we're at with this situation. Very good experience towing the camper home. We'll give you updates in our vlogs of if we have issues with the hitch. That's a good reason to subscribe to the channel and watch some of the videos that this channel is really about, which is about where the RV takes us and the adventures that this whole thing allows us to have. And an ease of use hitch platform is paramount to that, because I want to be able to go far down the road without having to worry about sway. And I want everything that could possibly fatigue our adventures to be mitigated as much as possible. So, friends, follow our adventures every Thursday at 5 o'clock. Next week's video will be on the batteries. We're not quite ready for adventure yet. But yeah, more to come in the spring. And we are going to get this out for another trip, though, too, before the end of the season. So, thanks for watching.